Hello there and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales. Tonight we are stepping inside the world of medieval castles. These were not just grand stone buildings. They were instruments of control, built to shape the land around them. A castle could change the fate of a road. It could decide who crossed a river. It could make a noble family feel almost untouchable. Behind every wall was a system of fear, labor, loyalty, and calculation. The more closely you look, the stranger castles become. Their beauty hides hard strategy. Their towers were designed to impress before they ever had to defend. Their ruins still hold clues about the people who cooked there, guarded there, prayed there, and waited through long sieges. This is a story of power made visible. It is also a story of daily life inside places that were never as simple as fairy tales suggest. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is settle in, let your shoulders soften, allow your breathing to slow. And as the day begins to fade, join me as we explore the fascinating world of medieval castles together. Let's begin. Medieval castles were machines of power before they were homes. To imagine a castle only as a grand residence is to miss its first and sharpest purpose. A castle was a statement that could be seen from miles away. It told farmers, merchants, soldiers, and rival lords who controlled the ground beneath their feet. Every tower, ditch, wall, and gateway was part of that message. Inside, people certainly slept, ate, prayed, and held court, but comfort came second to command. A lord could watch roads from high windows, store food against disorder, gather armed followers, and make judgment feel unavoidable. Castles also changed the psychology of a region. They made authority permanent. A mounted warrior might leave, but a stone fortress stayed behind, pressing its presence into daily life. In newly conquered lands, this mattered even more. A castle could turn a victory in battle into lasting control. It was not just where power lived, it was power made visible, organized, and difficult to escape. Stone castles were so expensive that building one could bankrupt nobles. A great fortress demanded more than ambition. It required money on a scale that could strain even wealthy families. Stone had to be quarried, shaped, transported, lifted, and fitted by people with rare skills. Timber was needed for scaffolding, cranes, roofs, hoardings, doors, and countless temporary structures that disappeared once the work was done. Ironworkers made hinges, nails, clamps, locks, and fittings. Lime burners produced mortar. Carters hauled supplies over roads that were often poor. Animals needed feed. Workers needed wages, food, tools, and shelter. The cost did not end when the walls stood finished. A castle needed repairs after storms, frost, settling, and war. Roofs leaked, drains blocked, plaster failed, and gates wore out. A lord who began too grandly could find himself trapped by his own project. Some castles were built in phases because money ran short. Their walls are not only records of design, they are records of financial endurance. Many castles survived attack because their wells were almost impossible to reach. During a siege, water could become more precious than weapons. Food might be rationed for weeks, but thirst broke people quickly. This is why a secure water supply was one of a fortress's hidden lifelines. Some wells were sunk through hard rock at astonishing depth, protected inside courtyards or enclosed spaces where attackers could not easily contaminate them. Digging such a well required patience and nerve. Workers descended into narrow shafts, cut stone by hand, and hauled rubble upward in baskets. In some places, the shaft reached so far down that drawing water became a labor in itself. Yet that effort could decide whether a garrison endured. An enemy outside might burn farms, block roads, or wait for hunger to do its work. But a castle with clean water had time on its side. The well was rarely the most dramatic feature. It was quiet, dark, and hidden, but it could be the reason the fortress lived. A single castle could control roads, rivers, and entire regions. A well-placed fortress did not need to cover a huge area with soldiers. It only needed to sit where movement became narrow. A bridge, a mountain pass, a river crossing, or a bend in a trade route could give one stronghold influence far beyond its walls. Travelers had to pass nearby, merchants might be charged tolls. Armies had to decide whether to attack, avoid, or negotiate. This made location as important as stone. A castle above a valley could see trouble before it arrived. A fortress beside water could watch cargo moving downstream. Even a small garrison could matter if the landscape forced people close to its gates. In this way, medieval power often worked through bottlenecks. The castle did not need to chase the world came to it. Roads carried money, news, grain, animals, and soldiers. Whoever controlled those routes could shape the fortunes of everything around them. Castle walls were designed to turn fear into a physical experience. Approaching a fortress was meant to change how a person felt. The walls rose above you. The gate narrowed your path. The towers watched from angles that made escape difficult. Even before a fight began, the building was working on the mind. Defenders wanted visitors to understand that they were being measured, exposed, and contained. A castle entrance was often a lesson in vulnerability. You might pass beneath murder holes, between thick doors, and under the gaze of guards who could see you better than you could see them. This was architecture as pressure. It made authority feel heavy. It also discouraged rash attacks, because anyone looking up at those heights could imagine what would fall from them. The great genius of castle design was not only in resisting force, it was in shaping emotion. Stone could create hesitation, height could create obedience. A wall could make courage feel suddenly smaller. The strongest castles could fall through hunger rather than battle. Many sieges were not storms of ladders and clashing swords. They were waiting games. An attacker could surround a fortress, block supply lines, and let time become the weapon. Inside the walls, every sack of grain mattered. Salted meat, dried peas, ale, cheese, and stored flour became a measure of survival. Horses and livestock consumed precious supplies, so their presence could become a burden. Disease might spread in crowded quarters. Tempers could fray as hope narrowed day by day. A fortress that no army could easily break might still surrender when the pantry failed. This gave siege warfare a grim patience. Commanders calculated not only wall thickness, but harvests, seasons, and the morale of people trapped inside. Sometimes defenders negotiated honorable terms before collapse became complete. Sometimes they held out long enough for relief to arrive. Hunger made castles human. It reminded everyone that stone could protect bodies, but it could not feed them forever. Concentric castles trapped attackers between walls like a deadly maze. The most advanced fortresses did not rely on one barrier. They used layers. An outer wall slowed the enemy while a higher inner wall allowed defenders to fire over it. If attackers broke through the first line, they did not suddenly win. They entered a space where movement was exposed and danger came from several directions. This design reached remarkable sophistication in parts of the Eastern Mediterranean and later influenced castle building elsewhere. The effect was both practical and psychological. Each captured section revealed another obstacle behind it. Victory kept retreating inward. Attackers had to bring equipment farther into hostile ground, while defenders could withdraw to stronger positions without abandoning the fortress. These castles turned space into a sequence of problems. They made an assault feel like being pulled deeper into a trap. The brilliance lay in the layering. One wall could fail, yet the whole design could keep fighting. A castle's greatest weapon was often its position on the landscape. Stone mattered, but geography could matter more. Builders looked for places where nature had already done part of the defensive work. A steep hill could exhaust attackers before they reached the gate. A cliff could remove one side from danger. Marshy ground could slow horses and engines. A river could supply movement, food, and communication, while also limiting approach. The best sites made an enemy solve the land before even touching the walls. This is why some castles seem to grow directly from rock. Their strength is not only the masonry, it is the partnership between human planning and natural difficulty. A badly placed fortress might require endless building to protect it. A brilliant site could make a smaller castle formidable. Medieval builders were not simply stacking stones, they were reading the terrain. They studied slopes, sightlines, water, wind, and distance. The result was defense that began long before the first arrow flew. Siege engines could throw stones heavier than a grown person. The sight of a large trebuchet being assembled outside a fortress must have been terrifying. These machines turned patience and engineering into destructive rhythm. A massive wooden arm swung under the force of a counterweight, sending a sling forward with startling power. The stone did not need to smash an entire wall at once. Repeated impacts could loosen masonry, shake morale, and make defenders feel that the enemy had brought thunder to earth. Some missiles were chosen for damage, while others carried more unsettling purposes. Attackers might hurl rotting animal remains, firepots, or messages meant to frighten those inside. Building and operating such engines took skilled carpenters, rope makers, soldiers, and careful coordination. They were not simple devices. They were field constructions of mathematics, timber, and intimidation. Against a castle, a siege engine became a public display of persistence. Every launch said the same thing. The waiting would continue until something gave way. Some castles became towns because people gathered beneath their protection. A fortress could draw life toward it. Where there was protection, there could be trade. Where there was trade, there could be houses, workshops, markets, and eventually streets. People settled near castles because danger was part of medieval life, and the shadow of a stronghold offered a sense of order. Craftsmen found customers among soldiers and servants. Farmers brought produce to sell. Travelers stopped where guards and walls made the road feel safer. Over time, these settlements could grow into busy communities with their own identity. The castle above them remained a symbol of authority, but the town below had its own pulse. This relationship was not always comfortable. Lords collected dues, controlled rights, and sometimes demanded labor, yet the attraction remained powerful. A castle could become the seed of urban life. What began as a military structure might shape generations of ordinary work, exchange, marriage, dispute, and memory. The first European castles were often wooden towers on artificial hills. Before the great stone fortresses, many castles were fast, practical, and made largely of earth and timber. The raised mound was called a motte, and on top stood a wooden tower or enclosure. Below it lay a bailey, an enclosed yard where animals, supplies, workshops, and people could be protected. This design spread rapidly because it solved an urgent problem. A lord could create a defensible strongpoint without waiting years for stone construction. The mound gave height. The ditch provided material and protection. The timber palisade created a barrier that could be repaired or extended. These early castles may look simple compared with later giants, but they changed the map of medieval Europe. They allowed conquerors and local rulers to stamp control onto contested land with speed. Many later stone castles began on these same sites. Beneath famous masonry, there may lie the memory of an older wooden fortress raised in haste and sharpened by necessity. Motte and bailey castles could be built with astonishing speed. Speed was one reason this design became so influential. In a dangerous political moment, a ruler could not always wait for a masterpiece of masonry. Earth could be dug, timber could be cut, a ditch, mound, palisade, and tower could rise quickly with enough labor. That rapid construction made the design perfect for conquest and consolidation. After a campaign, a lord could secure newly taken territory before resistance regrouped. The building process itself was a display of control, because local labor might be compelled to reshape the land under orders. Once finished, the castle gave a small force a protected base from which to patrol, collect dues, and watch the surrounding countryside. Its weakness was fire and decay, but its advantage was immediacy. In the unstable world of the early Middle Ages, that mattered enormously. A fast fortress could change events before a slower and stronger one was even begun. Windsor Castle began as a Norman fortress after the conquest of England. Today, Windsor is associated with monarchy, ceremony, and continuity, but its origins lie in military control. After the Norman conquest, William the Conqueror needed strong points that could secure his new kingdom. Windsor's site was chosen near the River Thames and close enough to London to matter strategically. The early castle was not the polished royal residence known today. It began as part of a network of Norman power, built to hold territory after a dramatic political takeover. Its raised earthwork and timber defenses belonged to a world still tense with resistance. Over the centuries, monarchs transformed the site. Stone replaced wood. Apartments, chapels, courtyards, and ceremonial spaces expanded its purpose. Yet beneath the grandeur remains the logic of conquest. Windsor's long history is powerful because it did not begin as decoration. It began as an answer to insecurity. The palace grew from a fortress, and the fortress grew from the need to command. The Tower of London was built to dominate a conquered city. The White Tower was not placed in London by accident. It rose after the Norman conquest as a monumental signal to the largest and most important city in England. Its stone mass was unfamiliar, imposing, and deliberately hard to ignore. For Londoners, it was a reminder that new rulers had arrived and intended to stay. The building served several purposes at once. It protected royal authority, housed high-status occupants, stored valuables, and projected intimidation into the city around it. Its strength was physical, but its message was political. The use of pale stone made it stand out even more against the urban landscape. Later generations expanded the complex with walls, towers, and gates, turning it into a fortress with many layers of meaning. It became a prison, an armory, a royal residence, and a place of ceremony. Yet its beginning was blunt. It was a castle built to make conquest permanent. Carnarvon Castle was designed to echo the power of ancient Rome. Edward I's castle at Carnarvon was not simply another fortress in Wales. It was built to make a claim about authority. Its banded stonework and polygonal towers were intended to recall imperial imagery, especially the walls associated with Roman and Byzantine power. This was visual politics in masonry. The message was that the king was not merely occupying land. He was presenting himself as a ruler with ancient, almost universal authority behind him. The site also carried deep symbolic weight, because Roman remains and Welsh legend both shaped the imagination of the region. Carnarvon's design felt different from plainer military works. It was aggressive, theatrical, and unusually self-conscious. Its walls did not only resist attack, they spoke. They told onlookers that the power behind them was organized, wealthy, and determined to write itself into history. For anyone approaching the castle, the architecture was a lesson before a single word was spoken. Harlech Castle could be supplied by sea during a long siege. Harlech was built on a dramatic rock in North Wales, but its most remarkable advantage was not only height. When it was constructed, the sea came much closer than it does today. A stairway of many steps descended from the castle toward a water gate, allowing supplies to reach the fortress by ship. This mattered because a besieging army on land could not easily starve it into surrender while the coastline remained open. Food, soldiers, and messages could arrive from beyond the enemy's grasp. The design shows how carefully medieval builders understood logistics. A castle was not just a wall against attack, it was a system for endurance. Harlech's position created a link between stone and sea, making the fortress part of a wider network of royal control. Later changes in the shoreline altered the setting, but the original idea remains striking. The castle was made to survive by keeping one path open to the world. Crac des Chevaliers became one of the Crusader world's strongest fortresses. High in present-day Syria, this castle grew into a masterpiece of layered defense. The Knights Hospitaller expanded it into a vast stronghold with massive walls, towers, halls, storage spaces, and a protected interior built for endurance. Its position allowed it to watch important routes through the region, while its architecture made direct assault extremely difficult. The fortress combined military planning with the resources of a powerful religious order. It was not merely a local noble's residence. It was a strategic base in a contested world, tied to wider struggles across the eastern Mediterranean. Visitors later admired its strength because so much of its medieval form survived. The castle seems almost carved from the logic of defense itself, thick masonry, controlled approaches, and inner security made it famous among historians of fortification. Crac des Chevaliers shows what castle building could become when money, experience, geography, and constant danger met in one extraordinary place. Chateau Gaillard was built with breathtaking speed by Richard the Lionheart. On a high site above the river Seine, Richard I ordered a fortress that was meant to challenge the King of France and guard the route toward Normandy. The work moved with extraordinary urgency. Men, materials, and money were driven toward a single strategic goal. Richard understood that a castle could be a weapon even before it was attacked, because its existence altered what enemies dared to attempt. Chateau Gaillard used an ambitious design with strong walls, an imposing inner core, and features meant to frustrate siegecraft. Its name has often been linked with boldness, and that suits its character. It was not a slow family seat grown over generations. It was a statement made at speed by a king who knew warfare intimately. Yet even this formidable place eventually fell after Richard's death. That makes it more fascinating, not less. It proves that brilliance in stone still depended on politics, timing, and human decision. Dover Castle guarded England's coast like a stone warning to invaders. Dover stands near the shortest sea crossing between England and the European mainland, which made its position exceptionally important. Whoever held that height watched one of the kingdom's most sensitive approaches. The castle's great tower, begun under Henry II, created a powerful royal centre within a larger defensive complex. Around it, earthworks and walls developed into a fortress meant to resist serious attack. Dover was not guarding an ordinary stretch of coast. It was watching the gateway through which armies, messengers, merchants, and danger might come. Its history reflects that significance. The site remained militarily important long after the medieval period, because geography did not stop mattering when armor changed. What makes Dover so compelling is the continuity of its role. The castle is a medieval answer to a timeless problem. How do you protect an island at the point where the sea feels narrowest? You build where every sail can be noticed. Edinburgh Castle rises from a volcanic rock older than humanity. The fortress stands on Castle Rock, the remains of ancient volcanic activity shaped over immense spans of time by ice and weather. Long before kings, soldiers, or masons arrived, geology had already made the place formidable. Steep sides gave natural protection, while the summit offered command over the surrounding area. This is why the site became so valuable. Human builders did not create its power from nothing. They recognized a natural stronghold and added walls to what the earth had prepared. Edinburgh's history is layered with royal residence, military storage, siege, ceremony, and national memory. But the foundation beneath it is far older than any kingdom. That contrast gives the castle its strange force. A human story sits on a stone story almost beyond imagination. When you look at it, you are seeing medieval ambition perched on deep time. The rock made defense possible, and history gathered there because the landscape invited power to stay. Bodiam Castle looks romantic, but it was built for real defense. Its reflection in the water can make it seem like a fairy tale brought to life. Yet the setting was not chosen only for beauty. Built in the late medieval period in southeast England, it appeared during a time of tension with France, when coastal regions feared raids and local power still needed to be displayed. The wide water around it created distance. The approach forced visitors toward controlled entry points. The towers and battlements gave the building a complete defensive outline, even though historians still debate how battle-ready it truly was. That is what makes Bodiam so fascinating. It sits between image and function. It was a fortress, but also a statement of status by a man who wanted his authority to look ancient, secure, and impressive. Its walls were not just protection, they were performance. Bodiam reminds us that castles could defend the body, impress the eye, and shape reputation all at once. Castles often used spiral stairs to disadvantage right-handed attackers. Inside a tower, even a staircase could become a weapon. Many medieval spiral stairs climbed clockwise from the bottom, which favored defenders standing above. A defender could swing a sword with more freedom because his right arm had space near the outer wall. An attacker climbing upward often found his right side cramped against the central column. This made every step more awkward and dangerous. He was already fighting gravity, poor footing, darkness, and fear. Now the architecture itself worked against his body. The idea was simple but brutally clever. A narrow stair also prevented large groups from rushing upward together, so attackers could be met one at a time. Not every staircase followed this pattern, and not every fight happened exactly as imagined. Still, the principle reveals something important. Castle builders thought in moments. They imagined the breathless climb, the shield raised too late, and the fatal advantage hidden in a turn of stone. Murder holes allowed defenders to strike enemies trapped beneath gateways. The most dangerous place in many castles was not the outer wall, it was the passage just inside the gate. Attackers who forced their way into this confined space might find themselves under a ceiling full of openings. From above, defenders could drop stones, shoot downward, pour water, release sand, or attack with other materials suited to the moment. The name is dramatic, but the purpose was practical. It turned a gateway into a killing zone, where courage suddenly became helplessness. A man below could not easily climb, run, or defend himself from every direction. The passage might also be blocked at both ends, leaving intruders sealed inside while defenders worked from safety overhead. This was castle design at its most calculating. The entrance had to welcome allies during ordinary life, yet punish enemies during an assault. In that double purpose lies the genius of the medieval gatehouse. It was doorway and trap together. Arrow loops let archers shoot while staying almost completely protected. From outside, an arrow loop might look like a thin slit cut into stone. From inside, it could open into a wider recess where an archer stood with room to draw, aim, and adjust. This contrast was the secret. The defender had a usable fighting space, while the attacker saw only a narrow target. Some loops were shaped to widen the field of fire. Others carried cross openings that helped with shooting at different angles. They were not random cracks in the wall. They were carefully designed points of vision and violence. In the age of bows and crossbows, such openings made a wall feel alive. A quiet surface could suddenly release missiles from places that seemed too small to matter. They also allowed defenders to watch without fully revealing themselves. The castle became a body with hundreds of narrow eyes. Each slit reminded approaching enemies that the stone was not passive, it was watching and ready. Portcullises could slam down and seal a gateway in seconds. A heavy grating of wood or iron could hang above an entrance, waiting in grooves cut into the gate passage. When released, it dropped with frightening speed. The sharp lower ends could strike the ground with a sound that must have carried through stone like a verdict. This device gave defenders a way to close an opening almost instantly, even if outer doors were damaged or under pressure. It could trap attackers inside a passage, divide a charging group, or buy time while other defenses came into play. Raising it again required effort through ropes, pulleys, or a winding mechanism. That effort was worth it because gateways were always vulnerable. They had to open for ordinary life yet resist the most desperate moments of war. The portcullis solved that contradiction with brutal efficiency. It made the entrance flexible. One moment it was a path, the next it was a barrier with teeth. Drawbridges were rare compared with the castles people imagine today. The classic image of a bridge lifting over a water-filled moat is powerful, but it was not universal. Many castles used fixed bridges, causeways, simple wooden crossings, or carefully angled approaches instead. A moving bridge required engineering, maintenance, counterweights, or chains, and a setting that made the mechanism useful. It also had to be protected, because a broken drawbridge could trap defenders as easily as attackers. In some places, the ditch was dry. In others, the entrance was guarded more by towers, gates, and turns than by a dramatic rising span. This difference matters because it shows how varied castles really were. They were not built from a single storybook pattern. Each one answered local needs, available money, terrain, and expected threats. A drawbridge could be impressive, and it certainly existed in many fortified sites. Yet medieval builders were practical. They used it when it served the design, not because romance demanded it. Moats did not always hold water, but they always slowed attackers. A moat was not simply a pretty ring of water around a castle. At its heart, it was an obstacle. A dry ditch could be just as useful if it forced attackers to climb down, cross exposed ground, and scramble upward under fire. Wet moats added further difficulty, especially if they were deep, muddy, or controlled by local water systems. Either way, the aim was to break momentum. Siege equipment could not roll easily across a trench. Ladders became harder to place. Miners had more distance to deal with before reaching the wall. Even a determined assault lost speed when the ground itself became a problem. Some ditches were shaped to make the wall seem taller from below, turning perspective into intimidation. A moat also marked separation. It made the fortress feel removed from ordinary land, as though power had pulled itself apart from the world. Crossing that boundary was never meant to feel simple. Some moats were filled with sharp stakes instead of deep water. When people imagine moats, they often picture dark water, but dry defenses could be just as forbidding. In some fortifications, ditches could be lined with pointed timber stakes to make crossings slow and dangerous. These obstacles were meant to disrupt bodies and formation. A man climbing through them could not move quickly. A horse might refuse or stumble. A siege party carrying ladders or shields would have to pause in the most exposed place possible. The stakes did not need to stop everyone. They needed to delay enough people for defenders above to do the rest. This is a recurring truth of castle warfare. Obstacles worked by stealing seconds, breaking order, and forcing enemies into awkward positions. A sharpened timber hidden in a ditch was simple compared with a tower, but it fit into the larger defensive machine. Medieval fortification often depended on such combinations. The humble stake could become terrifying when placed beneath watching walls. Castle gates were usually the weakest and most heavily defended points. A wall can be thick and unbroken, but a fortress must still have an entrance. That necessity created a problem. The gate was the place where daily life flowed in and out, yet it was also the place an enemy most wanted to force. Builders answered by turning entrances into layered systems. A path might bend to expose attackers. Towers might flank the approach. Doors could be strengthened with iron. Grills, bars, chambers, and overhead openings could multiply the hazards. The goal was not only to block entry, but to make every step toward it costly. This is why gateways often became some of the most elaborate parts of a castle. They had to carry symbolic weight too. Important visitors entered there, so the architecture needed to impress as well as protect. In that sense, the gate was a paradox. It was the controlled weakness of the fortress, and because of that, it became a masterpiece of defense. Gatehouses could function like miniature castles inside the larger fortress. A powerful gatehouse was far more than a doorway with a roof. It could contain rooms, guard posts, storage areas, upper chambers, and several layers of barriers. If attackers reached it, defenders could continue to resist from within the structure itself. The gatehouse might have its own doors, passages, stairs, firing positions, and protected platforms. This made it almost independent, a compact stronghold built into the most dangerous part of the site. In peacetime, it controlled access and displayed authority to everyone who arrived. In wartime, it became a concentrated defensive system. Some gatehouses were grand enough to house important officials or provide comfortable rooms above the entrance. That combination is revealing. Medieval architecture often refused to separate function from message. The same building could inspect travelers, shelter guards, intimidate enemies, and announce lordship. A visitor passing underneath was not simply entering a castle. They were passing through a smaller fortress designed to judge them first. Battlements gave defenders cover while they watched and fired downward. The familiar notched outline along castle walls is more than decoration. The raised sections provided cover, while the lower gaps allowed defenders to look out or shoot. This rhythm of solid and open stone created a fighting edge along the top of the wall. From there, guards could observe the surrounding land, signal warnings, and respond quickly if danger appeared. During an assault, they could duck behind protection, then rise briefly to fire or throw. The design seems simple, which is part of its brilliance. It turned the wall walk into a defended platform, not just a high pathway. Battlements also changed the appearance of a castle. Their jagged skyline communicated readiness even when no soldiers stood there. That visual message became so strong that crenellations later appeared on buildings with little real military purpose. The shape itself came to mean power. What began as practical protection became one of the most recognizable symbols of medieval authority. Machicolations let defenders attack the base of their own walls. One of the hardest problems in defense was seeing the ground directly below. If enemies reached the foot of a wall, they could work under the worst blind spot. Machicolations answered that problem with projecting stonework containing openings in the floor. From above, defenders could strike straight down at anyone pressing against the base. The design was especially useful over gates, towers, and vulnerable stretches of wall. It required skilled masonry because the projection had to bear weight while leaving spaces for action. Where fully developed, it gave a fortress a terrifying vertical reach. An attacker who survived missiles from the front might still be exposed from overhead. This detail also shows how castle design evolved through practical experience. Builders learned where danger gathered, then shaped stone to cover those places. A machicolation is not just an architectural flourish. It is a direct answer to a desperate human question. What happens when the enemy reaches the wall? Round towers made stone walls harder to undermine and collapse. A tower with curved sides had important advantages in siege warfare. Corners on square towers could be attacked, weakened, or undermined with more predictable results. A round tower spread force differently and gave miners fewer vulnerable angles to exploit. It also improved visibility, allowing defenders to watch and shoot across a wider field around the wall. When stones from siege engines struck curved masonry, the shape could help deflect or reduce the concentration of impact. This did not make round towers invincible, but it made them a smarter answer to known threats. Their appearance also changed the character of a castle. They looked more fluid, more complete, and often more advanced than older square forms. The move toward rounded towers reveals the dialogue between attack and defense. Every time siegecraft improved, builders learned. Every time builders improved, attackers adapted. Castle architecture was never frozen. It was a conversation in stone shaped by danger and experience. Square towers had dangerous corners that siege engineers could exploit. Early stone castles often used square or rectangular towers, partly because they were straightforward to design and build, yet those sharp angles could become liabilities. Corners absorbed stress poorly when compared with curved forms. They offered attackers clear points to target with mining or repeated impacts. If an enemy dug beneath a corner and burned the timber supports inside the tunnel, that section could drop and crack with devastating effect. Defenders understood this risk, but older castles could not easily change their bones. Square towers still had strengths. They provided usable interior rooms, familiar construction methods, and clear wall connections. Their weakness lay in how neatly they presented vulnerable edges to a determined foe. This reminds us that castles were not perfect machines. They were built within the knowledge and resources of their moment. A tower that looked imposing in one century might reveal flaws in the next. The history of fortification is partly the history of old confidence meeting new methods. The keep was often the castle's final place of refuge. At the heart of many castles stood a strong tower built to endure, even if other defenses failed. This inner structure could hold important rooms, stores, valuables, and people who mattered politically. Its thick walls and limited access made it difficult to capture quickly. In a crisis, defenders could retreat there and continue resistance from a more secure position. Yet the keep was not only a last shelter, it was also a symbol of lordship. Rising above the site, it made authority visible from outside and inside the walls. Some keeps were austere military towers. Others contained fireplaces, chapels, decorated chambers, and spaces for receiving guests. Their meaning depended on both strength and presence. To stand before one was to feel the hierarchy of the place. Everything seemed to lead upward toward concentrated power. If the outer castle was a shell, the keep was the hard core. It held the promise that resistance could continue. A castle chapel could be as important as its strongest tower. Faith was woven through medieval life, so a place of worship inside a fortress was not an afterthought. The chapel gave the household a sacred center. Lords, ladies, soldiers, servants, and guests might hear mass there, mark holy days, pray before danger, or seek meaning after loss. Its presence also signaled legitimacy. The castle was not merely a place of force. It claimed to stand within a moral and spiritual order. Some chapels were small and plain. Others were richly decorated with painted walls, carved stone, precious vessels, and carefully arranged light. In a world where warfare and devotion often existed side by side, the chapel carried emotional weight. It could calm fear before a siege, bless political decisions, and remind everyone that earthly power was believed to answer to a higher authority. The strongest tower defended bodies. The chapel tended to the soul of the household and the story it told about itself. Great halls were where power was performed before everyone present. The heart of castle life was often a large communal room where meals, meetings, ceremonies, and judgments took place. This was where hierarchy became visible. The lord or lady sat in the place of highest honor, often on a raised platform, while others were arranged according to rank. Food, seating, clothing, speech, and service all communicated status. A great hall could be noisy and crowded, filled with servants moving between tables and retainers watching every gesture. It was also where hospitality became political. Feeding people was a display of wealth. Receiving guests was a performance of confidence. Settling disputes before witnesses turned private authority into public fact. The architecture supported this theater. High roofs, wall hangings, fireplaces, and decorated details all helped shape the experience. A castle might be defended by walls, but its social order was defended in the hall. There, power did not hide. It sat in full view and made everyone notice. Castle kitchens could feed hundreds during feasts and emergencies. Behind the impressive rooms lay an intense world of heat, labor, smoke, and coordination. Large castle kitchens had to produce food for households that might swell during visits, celebrations, or moments of danger. A feast required planning long before the first dish appeared. Meat had to be butchered, bread had to be baked, fish needed cleaning. Spices, grains, ale, and fuel had to be stored and managed. During emergencies, the same kitchens became part of survival. They turned provisions into rationed meals for guards, servants, refugees, and noble residents. The work was skilled and relentless. Cooks understood timing, preservation, fire control, and the expectations of rank. A noble table might receive elaborate dishes, while workers ate simpler fare from the same system of supply. The kitchen reveals a castle as a living organism. Its walls might impress outsiders, but its daily strength depended on people who rose early, sweated over flames, and kept everyone fed. Smoke from castle hearths often escaped through simple roof openings. Before chimneys became common in many parts of castle life, smoke could be a constant companion. In earlier halls, a central hearth might burn beneath a louver or opening in the roof. The fire gave warmth and light, but the smoke did not always leave obediently. It drifted upward, gathered under rafters, and sometimes settled into eyes, clothing, and tapestries. Airflow depended on wind, building shape, and the patience of everyone inside. This made the atmosphere of a medieval hall very different from the polished rooms people imagine today. Fire was necessary, but it was messy. It blackened surfaces, flavored the air, and reminded everyone that comfort required compromise. Later, fireplaces and chimneys improved control, allowing more private, heated rooms and cleaner interiors. Even so, the earlier arrangement tells us something vivid. A castle was not a silent stone jewel. It breathed smoke, smelled of fuel, and warmed itself through methods that could be both welcome and uncomfortable. Glass windows were a luxury in many medieval castles. Light inside a castle was not something to take for granted. In many periods and places, window glass was costly, fragile, and a mark of wealth. Openings might instead be covered with shutters, oiled cloth, horn panels, or wooden screens. This meant interiors could be dim, drafty, and strongly shaped by the seasons. Where glass did appear, it carried prestige. It allowed light to enter while keeping out some weather, and in finer settings, it could be colored or patterned for beauty. A glazed window suggested resources, refinement, and connection to skilled craft. The contrast between military walls and delicate glass is one of the pleasures of castle history. These buildings were not only about resisting attack, they were also about gradually making elite life more comfortable and impressive. A small pane could change a room. It softened the boundary between safety and sunlight, and it showed that luxury could be measured in brightness. Tapestries helped warm stone rooms as much as they decorated them. A bare stone chamber could feel cold, even when it looked grand. Wall hangings helped solve that problem. Thick woven textiles added color, displayed status, and reduced the chill that radiated from masonry. They could also soften sound, making a room feel more enclosed and comfortable. The images woven into them often carried meaning. Noble households might choose scenes of hunting, legend, devotion, or family identity. Because tapestries could be moved, they traveled with important households from residence to residence. They were wealth in portable form. Hanging them transformed the space quickly, turning stone into a setting for authority and taste. Their practical value was just as important as their beauty. In winter, a tapestry was not merely decoration. It was part of how people endured the building they lived in. A castle room dressed in fabric reminds us that medieval comfort was often created layer by layer, through objects that worked on the body and the imagination. Rushes on floors could hide dirt, insects, and dropped food. Many castle floors were not polished surfaces in the modern sense. They could be covered with rushes, straw, herbs, or other plant materials that absorbed spills and made walking more comfortable. Freshly laid rushes might smell pleasant, especially when mixed with sweet herbs. Over time, however, they collected crumbs, grease, mud, fleas, and whatever fell during crowded meals. Good household management required replacing or cleaning them, but standards varied with wealth, season, and discipline. This small detail brings castle life down from romance into reality. The great hall might glitter during a feast, yet underfoot lay the evidence of human living. Dogs might nose through scraps. Servants might sweep after meals. Guests might carry dirt inside from the courtyard. The floor was part of the household's daily battle against disorder. Medieval castles were impressive, but they were not sterile. They were busy, sensory places where rank and refinement existed beside mess, smell, and constant work. Private chambers became more common as castle life grew more refined. In the earlier Middle Ages, much elite life was communal. People ate, slept, worked, and met in shared spaces with little privacy by modern standards. Over time, higher status households sought more separation. Chambers allowed lords and ladies to withdraw from the crowded hall, conduct personal business, receive select visitors, and enjoy greater comfort. This change reflected more than taste. It showed a shift in how power was managed. Access became more controlled. To be invited into a private room meant favor. To be kept outside meant distance. Architecture began to create layers of intimacy, moving from public areas into increasingly restricted spaces. These rooms could contain better furnishings, fireplaces, painted decoration, and valuable textiles. They helped transform some castles from hard military strongholds into sophisticated residences. The growth of private chambers reveals a human side of fortification. Even in buildings made for control, people wanted warmth, retreat, conversation, and a door that could close. Garderobes dropped waste through walls into pits or moats below. Medieval sanitation could be direct, practical, and startling. A garderobe was a small latrine chamber built into or attached to a wall. The waste might fall through a shaft into a pit, down the outer face of the building, or into water below, depending on the design. The arrangement was convenient for residents, but not always pleasant for anyone beneath or nearby. Some shafts required cleaning, which became one of the least enviable jobs in a castle. The word could also refer to a place for storing clothing, possibly because smells were thought to discourage moths and other pests. Whatever the linguistic detail, the structure reminds us that castles were lived in by real bodies. Grand towers needed drainage, noble households needed latrines, waste had to go somewhere. This is where the romance of castle life meets the blunt engineering of daily survival. Even the most imposing fortress had to solve the oldest human problem. Castle wells could be deeper than the towers built above them. A well inside a fortress might descend through layers of rock for a distance that seems almost unbelievable. In some castles, the shaft reached deeper into the earth than the tallest tower rose into the air. That hidden vertical world was essential because water meant endurance. Digging it required enormous effort. Workers had to cut downward in cramped conditions, lift spoil to the surface, and keep the shaft stable. The deeper they went, the darker and more dangerous the task became. Once finished, the well became a protected lifeline, often enclosed so it could not easily be reached by enemies. Drawing water could still be hard, especially when buckets had to travel a long way. Yet every drop justified the labor. The drama of a castle is usually imagined above ground, in walls and battlements. But sometimes its most important feature lay below everyone's feet. A deep well was architecture turned downward, a tower into the earth. Some castles had secret postern gates for messengers and sudden escapes. Not every entrance was meant to impress. A postern was a smaller gate, often placed away from the main approach, and used for controlled movement. It could allow messengers to slip out, scouts to return, or defenders to launch a sudden action when the main gate was watched. In a siege, such a doorway might carry hope. A single rider leaving at night could bring news, seek help, or carry terms for negotiation. Yet the same feature created risk. If discovered or betrayed, the hidden entrance could become a fatal weakness. That tension made posterns carefully guarded and sometimes cleverly placed. They revealed that castles were not sealed boxes. They needed secrecy, flexibility, and communication. A fortress cut off from the world was vulnerable in its own way. The small gate reminds us that survival did not always depend on massive walls. Sometimes it depended on one narrow passage, one trusted guard, and one person moving unseen. Attackers sometimes tunneled under walls to make them collapse. Mining was one of the most frightening forms of siege warfare because it attacked from below. Engineers and laborers dug toward the foundation of a wall or tower, often working in darkness while defenders tried to detect them. The tunnel might be propped with timber as earth was removed. Once enough support had been taken away, the attackers could set fire to the wooden props. As they burned, the tunnel failed and the structure above might crack, sink, or collapse. This was dangerous work for everyone involved. Tunnels could cave in, defenders might dig. Smoke, heat, and panic could fill the underground space. The method shows that a castle could be challenged in dimensions beyond what the eye could see. A wall that looked invulnerable from outside might be quietly weakened from beneath. Siege warfare was not only about force against stone, it was also about patience, geometry, and the hidden violence of earth being removed. Defenders listened underground for the faint sounds of enemy miners. When a siege grew tense, the most important warning might be a sound almost too soft to hear. Defenders who suspected mining could place bowls, drums, or other resonant objects near the ground to detect vibrations. They listened for scraping, tapping, and the dull movement of tools beneath the surface. If they found the direction, they might dig a countermine and meet the attackers underground. Such encounters were terrifying. Men could break into one another's tunnels in darkness, smoke, and cramped air, fighting in spaces never meant for bodies in armor. Sometimes defenders flooded tunnels or filled them with smoke. Sometimes both sides worked blindly. separated by only a thin layer of earth. This kind of warfare turned the castle's story upside down. The drama was not always on the walls beneath banners. It could happen underfoot in black passages, where listening became survival. The fortress had ears, and the ground itself became a battlefield. Fire could destroy wooden castles faster than any army could climb them. Timber fortifications could rise quickly, but their great enemy was flame. A wooden palisade, tower, or gate might resist arrows and small attacks, yet burning material changed the equation. Fire arrows alone were not always enough, especially against damp wood or prepared defenses, but determined attackers could use bundles, pitch, brushwood, or other combustibles to create dangerous heat. Once a blaze took hold, it threatened more than the structure. Smoke blinded defenders, panic spread, stored supplies, roofs, walkways, and ladders could ignite. A strong position could become uninhabitable in a shockingly short time. Defenders tried to reduce the risk by using wet hides, earth coverings, spacing, and quick repairs, but timber always carried vulnerability. This is one reason early castles often evolved. What had been useful in urgent moments became less reassuring over generations. Fire exposed the weakness of speed. A wooden castle could command the land one day, then vanish in smoke the next. Stone castles spread partly because timber fortresses burned too easily. The move from wood to stone was not just about grandeur, it was also about survival. Stone resisted fire far better, lasted longer, and gave a lord's authority a feeling of permanence. Rebuilding in masonry required huge resources, so the decision itself announced wealth and commitment. A stone wall could still be cracked, undermined, or battered, but it did not vanish in flame like timber. This changed the confidence of defenders and the calculations of attackers. A siege against stone demanded heavier equipment, more time, better planning, and often greater expense. The change also altered daily life. Stone buildings could support larger towers, more durable chambers, and more elaborate gate systems. Yet stone brought its own problems. It was cold, costly, and slow to build. That trade-off is what makes the transition so revealing. Medieval builders did not simply choose stronger material because it looked impressive. They chose it because warfare had taught them what burned. Lime mortar could take years to fully harden inside thick walls. The strength of a medieval wall depended on more than the stones people could see. Between those stones was mortar, and its chemistry worked slowly. Lime was made by burning limestone, then mixing the result with water and aggregate to create a binding material. Once placed in a wall, it hardened by reacting with carbon dioxide in the air. The surface could set first, while the interior remained softer for a long time. In very thick masonry, this process might continue far beyond the day the builders walked away. That means a new castle could look finished, while parts of its inner bonding were still quietly changing. Builders understood the behavior of their materials through experience, not modern chemistry, and they made choices based on craft knowledge passed between masons. The slow hardening of mortar gives castle walls a hidden life. They were not simply assembled and complete. They cured, settled, strengthened, and aged like enormous bodies of stone. Castle builders studied slopes, marshes, cliffs, and riverbends carefully. Choosing a castle site was an act of intelligence before it was an act of construction. Builders had to read the land like a military map. A slope could slow an assault. A marsh could make heavy equipment useless. A cliff could remove the need for walls on one side. A riverbend could control travel and supply while making approach more predictable. These features were not background scenery. They were part of the fortress. The right site could save money, reduce manpower, and make every defense more effective. The wrong site could turn even expensive masonry into a burden. Builders also had to consider practical needs. A castle required water, access to materials, routes for carts, and enough space for daily activity. The best locations balanced danger and usefulness. A perfect cliff with no supply route could become a trap. A castle began, therefore, with judgment. Long before the first stone was lifted, the landscape had to be understood. A rocky hilltop could be stronger than another layer of wall, When a fortress stood on hard, elevated ground, the earth itself did much of the defending. Attackers had to climb before they fought, and that climb cost breath, order, and confidence. Heavy siege equipment became harder to move uphill. Mining beneath foundations became more difficult when the base was solid rock. Ladders needed greater reach, and missiles launched from below lost some of their advantage. The defenders, meanwhile, gained sight and gravity. They could see movement at a distance and make any approach feel exposed. This is why so many castles seem inseparable from their heights. The builders were not only seeking drama, they were choosing natural strength. Adding more wall to a weak site could be costly and still leave problems unsolved. A hilltop changed the whole equation before any masonry began. It made the enemy fight the ground, then the wall, then the people above it. In castle warfare, height could be a silent ally. Some castles controlled bridges because bridges controlled movement and money. A bridge in the medieval world was not just a convenience. It was a valuable point where travel became concentrated. Carts, animals, pilgrims, merchants, messengers, and soldiers all needed reliable crossings. A castle placed near such a route could watch movement and profit from it. Tolls might be collected, goods could be inspected, suspicious travelers could be delayed. In unstable times, control of a bridge could decide whether an army advanced quickly or lost precious days seeking another crossing. This made bridges politically powerful. They connected communities, but they also created opportunities for authority. A lord who held the castle near a bridge could turn geography into income. The surrounding settlement might grow because people naturally gathered where roads met water. There is something revealing in this arrangement. Castles were not only about resisting attack, they were also about managing flow. Whoever controlled the crossing could influence commerce, communication, and the pace of events across an entire region. Castles near borders could become flashpoints for generations of conflict. A fortress on a frontier lived a tense life. It stood where laws, languages, loyalties, and ambitions met uneasily. Such castles were not merely local strongholds, they were declarations about who claimed the land. When rivals disputed a region, the castles within it became prizes, threats, and symbols all at once. A change of ownership could alter taxes, justice, military obligations, and the daily fears of nearby communities. Some border castles were attacked, repaired, reinforced, and attacked again across decades. Others became bargaining pieces in treaties or marriage arrangements. The people living around them could experience history as a recurring pressure rather than a single event. A child might grow up hearing stories of one siege, then witness another in adulthood. Borders were rarely simple lines on a map. They were zones of uncertainty. A castle in such a place could feel like a clenched fist, holding one side's claim against the other's memory. Lords needed royal permission to crenellate. In parts of medieval England, adding battlements could require formal approval from the crown. This permission was known as a license to crenellate. On the surface, it concerned architecture, but underneath it lay politics. Fortified features suggested power, and kings did not want every ambitious lord turning his residence into a private military challenge. Granting permission allowed the monarch to regulate the appearance and reality of defense. It also turned the act of building into a relationship with royal authority. A noble who received a license could display it as a sign of favor. The crown, in turn, could reward loyalty without giving away land or treasure. Not every licensed building was a serious fortress, and some unlicensed sites still had defensive features. The system was not perfectly neat, yet the idea is fascinating because it shows that battlements were never just stone shapes. They belonged to the language of status, permission, and controlled ambition. A license to crenellate could signal status as much as defense. For some nobles, permission to add battlements was as valuable as the battlements themselves. It told neighbors that the crown recognized their position. It allowed a house to look fortified even when its military value was limited. In a society deeply aware of rank, appearance mattered. Towers, parapets, and crenellated rooflines could turn a residence into a visible claim of importance. The building spoke before its owner did. Guests arriving at the gate would understand that this was not an ordinary manor. It belonged to someone with connections, resources, and enough favor to imitate the architecture of war. This did not mean the defenses were fake. Some had real use. Yet the social message could be just as important as the practical one. Architecture became a form of reputation. A license transformed stone into prestige, and prestige could shape marriages, alliances, local obedience, and the way a family imagined its own place in history. Castle building was political theater carved into stone. Every major fortress sent a message. It told rivals that its owner had wealth. It told tenants that authority was nearby. It told allies that support could be anchored in a real place. The drama began before construction ended. Workers arrived, carts moved, quarries opened, and the landscape changed under command. People watched a lord's ambition become visible day by day. Once complete, the castle continued the performance. Its towers framed ceremonies, its gates controlled access, its halls shaped encounters between ruler and visitor. Even decoration could make political claims through heraldry, imported materials, and carefully chosen forms. This was theater without a stage curtain. The audience was everyone who lived under its shadow. A castle could reassure, threaten, impress, or provoke depending on who looked at it. That is why building one was never neutral. Stone was expensive, slow, and public. To raise a fortress was to announce a version of the world and demand that others recognize it. Noble families used castles to announce their ancestry and ambition. A castle could be a family's memory made solid. Coats of arms, carved symbols, painted shields, and carefully arranged spaces helped tell a story about lineage. Some families emphasized old roots. Others used building projects to make newer power look ancient and inevitable. A tower might be named for an ancestor. A chapel might hold tombs that connected the living to the honored dead. Visitors would see not only wealth, but a claim of continuity. This mattered because noble status depended on recognition. A family had to be seen as worthy, established, and connected to the right networks. Castle building allowed them to shape that perception. It could also project future ambition. A new wing, a grander gate, or a more impressive hall suggested confidence in what was yet to come. In this way, a castle looked both backward and forward. It preserved the family's story while quietly arguing that the story deserved to grow. Siege warfare was often slower and more calculated than open battle. The popular image of a medieval siege is all noise and sudden violence, but many were campaigns of planning. Commanders studied supplies, seasons, roads, morale, and the chance of relief forces arriving. Attackers might build camps, dig trenches, raise engines, protect their own food lines, and wait for weakness. Defenders countered by managing stores, repairing damage, keeping discipline, and watching for signals beyond the walls. A single rash assault could waste lives without gaining anything. Patience often served better. Negotiation might occur during the siege as each side measured what it could afford to lose. Weather could change everything. Rain turned camps foul, winter strained animals. Harvest time affected both food and manpower. The castle became the center of a wider contest that included villages, fields, messengers, and politics far away. This slower reality is more compelling than a simple storming. It shows warfare as a test of nerves, calculation, and endurance, where time itself became a weapon. Starvation could defeat defenders without a single wall being breached. A fortress under siege became a world with a shrinking future. At first, stores might seem adequate. Then portions became smaller. Animals once kept for riding or labor might be considered as food. Grain had to be guarded from damp, theft, and pests. Ale, cheese, beans, and preserved meat took on new importance. The pressure was not only physical. Hunger changed mood, discipline, and loyalty. Servants, soldiers, nobles, and refugees did not all experience shortage equally, and resentment could spread inside the walls. Disease could follow weakened bodies and crowded spaces. Meanwhile, the attackers outside might do very little except prevent relief. That is the terrible logic of starvation warfare. It turned strength inward against the people sheltering behind it. A wall could remain upright while hope collapsed. Surrender, when it came, might be less a dramatic defeat than a final admission that the body had limits. Castles were powerful, but hunger was older than stone. Boiling oil was far less common than popular stories suggest. The image is famous, but reality was usually more practical. Oil was valuable, and large quantities were not always available for wasting in defense. Heating it safely during an attack would also require time, fuel, and suitable containers. Other materials were more likely because they were cheaper or easier to obtain. Defenders could use stones, hot water, sand, quicklime, timber, or whatever the situation allowed. The persistence of the boiling oil story tells us something about how castles live in imagination. People remember the most dramatic version even when daily warfare was governed by supply and inconvenience. Medieval defenders were not acting inside a legend. They were using what worked, what was at hand, and what could be managed under pressure. This does not make castle defense less fearsome. It makes it more real. The danger came not from one famous substance, but from the terrible creativity of people protecting a narrow entrance with limited resources. Defenders more often used stones, sand, water, or quicklime. The materials of defense were often ordinary until they were dropped from a height. Stones could crush helmets, break shields, and create chaos below a gate or wall. Sand, when heated, could slip through armor gaps and cause agony. Water could extinguish fires, soak attackers, or become dangerous when heated. Quicklime was especially feared because it could irritate eyes, skin, and lungs when dispersed. These materials were available in ways costly oil often was not. They also show how castle defense depended on preparation. Ammunition had to be gathered and placed where it could be used quickly. Containers, access routes, and overhead openings all mattered. The defender's advantage came from turning simple resources into vertical power. A stone on the ground is just a stone. From a parapet, it becomes a weapon with gravity behind it. Castle warfare repeatedly transformed the everyday into the terrifying. The familiar world changed meaning when the walls stood above you. Trebuchets used counterweights to unleash astonishing throwing power. A counterweight trebuchet looks almost elegant until you understand what it does. At one end of a huge arm hung a heavy mass. At the other, a sling held the missile. When released, the falling weight drove the arm upward and whipped the sling forward, sending the projectile in a powerful arc. The machine's brilliance lay in converting gravity into repeatable force. Skilled crews adjusted sling length, release angle, counterweight, and projectile size to improve range and accuracy. The rhythm of operation could become relentless. Load, pull down, release, strike, repair, and repeat. Against walls, the aim was cumulative damage. Against morale, every launch mattered immediately. Defenders could hear construction outside and know what was coming. These engines were also symbols of organized resources, because building one required timber, rope, ironwork, skilled labor, and protected space. A trebuchet was not just a weapon. It was an announcement that the besiegers had time, materials, and determination. Mangonels were simpler machines that hurled stones with violent force. Before the great counterweight machines became dominant, other throwing engines brought destructive energy to sieges. A mangonel used torsion or traction, depending on the type, to fling missiles toward walls and defenders. It could be less precise than later trebuchets, but precision was not always the point. The repeated shock of stones striking masonry, roofs, hoardings, or crowded areas could disrupt life inside a fortress. The machine might also target defenders on wall walks, forcing them to keep low or abandon positions. Crews had to coordinate their movements, prepare ammunition, and protect the engine from fire or sorties. These machines remind us that siege warfare was not static waiting alone. It could be a grinding exchange of labor and impact. One side built and launched, the other repaired, sheltered, and endured. A mangonel turned human effort into sudden violence at a distance. It made the space between army and castle feel less like safety and more like a storm path. Battering rams needed roofs because defenders attacked from above. A ram seems simple in idea. Bring a heavy beam to a gate or wall, then strike until something fails. In practice, the men using it were terribly exposed. They had to stand close to the fortress, often beneath the very places defenders had prepared to attack. This is why rams were commonly protected by covered frames. The shelter might be made of timber and hides, sometimes soaked to resist fire. Under that roof, crews could swing or roll the beam with some protection from missiles. Even then, the work was dangerous. Defenders might drop heavy objects, try to burn the covering, or attack the machine during a sortie. The ram's power came from repetition. One blow rarely decided anything. Many blows delivered in rhythm could crack timber, loosen fittings, and shake confidence. The covered ram shows the brutal closeness of siegecraft. Unlike a stone thrown from far away, it brought attackers right to the castle's teeth. Siege towers could be taller than the walls they approached. A siege tower was an attempt to build a moving height of your own. These great timber structures could carry soldiers upward behind protective walls of wood, allowing them to cross onto battlements by a bridge or platform. To work, they needed relatively level ground and enough preparation to reach the wall without sinking, burning, or breaking apart. That meant attackers often had to fill ditches, clear obstacles, and protect the tower as it crept forward. Defenders, seeing one approach, would try to stop it long before it arrived. Fire was a constant threat, so were stones, bolts, and sudden attacks from the castle. The psychological effect must have been immense. A wooden tower rolling slowly toward the walls turned the siege into a moving deadline. Each foot gained made danger more immediate. The idea was audacious. If the castle held the advantage of height, the besiegers would construct a rival height and push it into battle. Attackers filled ditches to bring engines closer to castle walls. The ground before a castle was often deliberately difficult, so attackers had to remake it under fire. Ditches, holes, uneven slopes, and cleared killing zones prevented heavy equipment from reaching useful positions. To solve this, besiegers might throw in earth, timber, brushwood, stones, or bundles of material to create a rough passage. This work was exhausting and dangerous. Laborers had to move forward while defenders watched from above. Shields, mantlets, or covered approaches might protect them, but never perfectly. Each basket of earth brought siege engines a little closer. Each filled section reduced the advantage of the fortress. This kind of work rarely appears in romantic retellings, yet it was central to real sieges. Before dramatic machines could strike, ordinary people had to drag, dig, carry, and endure. Castle warfare depended on labor as much as bravery. A ditch was not defeated by a heroic gesture, it was defeated by repeated loads of material under threat. Some sieges ended through negotiation rather than dramatic final assaults. Surrender could be a rational decision, not a failure of courage. If defenders believed relief would not come, supplies were failing, or the walls were about to be breached, negotiation might save lives. Terms could vary widely. A garrison might be allowed to leave with weapons. Nobles might be taken for ransom. Civilians might be spared. In harsher cases, refusal to surrender before an assault could lead to severe consequences if the attackers finally entered by force. This created a grim calculation. Hold too long, and mercy might vanish. Yield too early, and honor might suffer. Commanders had to read not only the military situation, but the character of the enemy. Negotiation also allowed attackers to avoid costly losses. A castle taken by agreement preserved troops, equipment, and time. The end of a siege could therefore unfold in words, hostages, oaths, and formal gestures. Not every castle fell with a crash. Some passed into new hands through tense conversation. Castles held prisoners whose ransom could shape noble fortunes. Captivity in the medieval elite world could be a financial opportunity. A captured knight, lord, or high-status enemy might be worth far more alive than dead. Castles provided secure places to hold such prisoners, while terms were arranged. The conditions varied. Important captives could receive decent treatment, servants, correspondence, and food suited to rank, because their value depended on identity and future payment. Ransom could enrich a captor, strain a family, or alter political relationships. Sometimes prisoners became bargaining pieces in wider disputes. Their release might involve money, land, promises, or exchanges. This makes the prison chamber part of the castle's economy of power. Behind locked doors, wealth could be negotiated one letter at a time. Captivity was frightening, but it was also governed by rules of status. The castle did not only defend treasure, it could hold human treasure, measured in lineage, influence, and the price others were willing to pay. High-status captives were often treated as valuable political assets. A noble prisoner might dine with surprising dignity, while still being unable to leave. This contrast seems strange today, but it made sense in a world of rank and ransom. The captive's body was controlled, yet his status could still be acknowledged. Good treatment might encourage cooperation, preserve reputation, and increase the chance of payment. He could also serve diplomacy. A prisoner who was humiliated too severely might become a source of lasting vengeance. A prisoner treated honorably might later become an ally, or at least a manageable enemy. Castles suited this delicate balance. They could restrict movement while providing chambers appropriate to importance. Some captives wrote letters, received visitors, played games, or negotiated through intermediaries. Their captivity was not freedom, but it was not always a dungeon story either. It was political custody. The castle became a place where enemies could be held, valued, pressured, and preserved all at the same time. Knights did not live in every castle all the time. The image of every castle constantly filled with armored knights is misleading. Many fortresses had small permanent staffs, and higher-ranking warriors moved between estates, campaigns, courts, and obligations. A castle's population changed with season, danger, and the presence of its lord. During peaceful periods, the place might be maintained by officials, guards, servants, and workers rather than a large military household. When threat increased, reinforcements could arrive. This flexible arrangement made sense because warriors were expensive to support. Horses needed feed. Men needed wages, equipment, food, and lodging. Keeping a great force in one place without need could drain resources. Castles were therefore not always buzzing with martial drama. Sometimes they were administrative centers, storehouses, residences, or symbols of authority with only enough armed presence to maintain control. This makes them more interesting, not less. Their power did not depend on constant spectacle. Even when lightly staffed, a fortress could shape behavior because everyone knew what it could become. Many castle garrisons were smaller than modern imagination suggests. A castle did not always require hundreds of defenders. A compact and well-designed fortress could be held by a surprisingly limited group, especially if the aim was to delay, deter, or maintain local authority. The number depended on size, importance, political danger, and available money. Some sites had only a handful of watchmen in ordinary times. Others expanded during crisis. This challenges the idea of castles as permanently crowded military bases. Their strength came partly from architecture multiplying human effort. A few alert defenders at key positions could close gates, sound warnings, patrol walls, and resist sudden attack. Of course, a serious siege demanded more people, especially for repair, guard rotation, and defense at multiple points. But manpower was costly, and medieval administration often worked with careful limits. The smaller garrison reveals the castle as an efficiency machine. It allowed a lord to project control without keeping an army everywhere at once. A few loyal guards could hold a strong castle for months. When the design was good and supplies were adequate, a small, determined group could become a serious obstacle. Loyalty mattered, because siege pressure tested more than military skill. Guards had to endure isolation, fear, boredom, shortage, and the temptation of bribery. They watched the enemy's campfires at night and measured each change outside the walls. If they trusted their commander and believed relief might come, they could keep resisting long after attackers expected surrender. The walls multiplied their presence. A gate could be held by a few. A narrow stair could be defended by one at a time. A tower could watch a wide approach. This is why castles were so valuable to rulers with limited forces. They turned small numbers into strategic delays. An army might be forced to stop for weeks because a handful of people refused to yield. In that sense, a castle could make loyalty visible. Stone held firm, but only because people did. Castle servants kept the fortress running more than warriors did. The daily life of a castle depended on work that rarely appears in heroic tales. Servants carried water, cleaned rooms, tended fires, prepared beds, moved food, washed linens, repaired clothing, and managed countless small tasks that made the household function. Without them, the grand structure would quickly become cold, dirty, hungry, and disordered. Their work connected every part of the building. A meal in the hall depended on people in the kitchen, pantry, buttery, bakehouse, and courtyard. A chamber made ready for a guest reflected invisible labor completed before arrival. Even military readiness required service. Weapons needed storage. Horses needed care. Lamps needed fuel. Doors, floors, and fires needed attention. Castles were social machines, and servants were their moving parts. To understand a fortress properly, you have to hear more than armor. You have to hear footsteps before dawn, buckets being lifted, cloth being beaten clean, and orders passing from room to room. Blacksmiths, carpenters, cooks, and laundresses were essential to castle life. A castle was a workplace filled with specialized skill. The blacksmith repaired fittings, tools, horseshoes, chains, and weapon parts. The carpenter maintained doors, roofs, carts, shutters, scaffolds, and furniture. The cook managed heat, timing, provisions, and the demands of rank. The laundress dealt with linens, clothing, stains, and the heavy labor of washing without modern convenience. Each role supported the visible power of the household in practical ways. A broken hinge could affect security. A leaking roof could damage stores. Poor food could damage morale. Dirty textiles could spread discomfort and disease. These workers turned an imposing structure into a usable place. Their knowledge was learned through practice and carried in the body. They knew the sound of a tool striking properly, the smell of bread near readiness, the feel of cloth rinsed clean enough. Castle history often follows lords and wars, but the building survived each day because skilled hands kept repairing the world inside it. A castle was both a military base and a busy workplace. To picture a castle only during attack is to miss most of its life. On ordinary days, it could be full of routines that had little to do with battle. Officials recorded dues, settled accounts, stored documents, and organized a state business. Craftsmen repaired structures, servants prepared meals, guards watched entrances, messengers came and went, animals needed feeding, supplies arrived in carts. A noble household might host guests, hear petitions, arrange marriages, or plan travel. All of this unfolded inside a building still shaped by defense. That mixture is what makes castles so compelling. A wall that could resist enemies also enclosed baking, bargaining, prayer, discipline, gossip, and fatigue. The same courtyard might hold armed men in crisis and chickens on a normal morning. Castles were not frozen monuments waiting for war. They were working centers where administration, domestic life, and security overlapped. Their power came from being useful every day, not only dramatic in danger. Horses required stables, fodder, farriers, and constant daily care. In medieval elite life, horses were not accessories. They were transport, status, military equipment, and financial investment. Keeping them healthy took steady work. Stables had to be cleaned, hooves needed trimming and shoeing, harness, saddles, and reins required repair. Fodder had to be stored, measured, and protected from damp. Grooms watched for lameness, sores, poor appetite, and signs of exhaustion. A valuable warhorse represented training, breeding, and considerable expense, while smaller riding horses and pack animals kept the household moving. Castles with mounted activity needed space and organization to support all of this. The smell and sound of horses would have been part of daily life. Hooves on stone, breath in cold air, leather being tightened, and hay being shifted all belonged to the castle's rhythm. Without horses, messages slowed, hunting changed, travel became harder, and military readiness suffered. The stable was not a background detail. It was one of the engines of noble power. Falconry could be practiced from castles as a noble display. To fly a hawk or falcon was to show refinement, wealth, and training. Birds of prey required expert handling, careful feeding, specialized equipment, and time. This made falconry an ideal pastime for the aristocracy. It was sport, but also performance. A noble riding out with a trained bird displayed control over nature in a way that impressed observers. Castles supported this culture through access to hunting land, storage for gear, and households large enough to maintain skilled falconers. The birds themselves carried status. Different species could be associated with different ranks and styles of hunting. The moment of release must have been thrilling. A still bird on the glove became sudden speed, rising into the air with deadly focus. Falconry connected patience with spectacle. It suited the castle world because it turned discipline into beauty and leisure into rank. The trained bird was more than a hunter. It was a living emblem of noble command. Hunting parks around castles showed wealth as clearly as walls did. A private hunting park was a powerful sign that land could be enclosed for elite pleasure. Maintaining one required legal rights, boundaries, keepers, animals, and protection from poaching. Deer were especially prized because they offered sport, meat, and status all at once. For a noble household, the park extended the meaning of the castle into the surrounding countryside. It showed that authority did not end at the gate. The lord could reserve whole landscapes for selected use. Guests might be invited to hunt, and such invitations created bonds of favor. The chase offered excitement, but it also reinforced hierarchy. Who rode where, who received the best quarry, and who ate the venison afterward all mattered. To local people, a park could be both impressive and frustrating, because enclosed land restricted access to resources they might once have used. A hunting park was therefore more than recreation. It was privilege mapped onto the land. Castle gardens grew herbs for medicine, flavor, and household use. Inside or near a castle, a garden could be far more practical than decorative. Herbs were grown because they mattered every day. Some helped season food in a world where taste depended heavily on what could be preserved, dried, or gathered close at hand. Others were used in household remedies, washes, ointments, and scented mixtures. A sprig of rosemary, sage, rue, mint, or lavender might belong as much to the sick room as to the kitchen. The garden also brought order into a heavily built environment. Paths, beds, walls, and clipped growth created a controlled piece of living space within the castle's harder world. In some households, gardens offered a place for walking, conversation, and private reflection. Their beauty was tied to usefulness. A plant could smell pleasant, soothe discomfort, flavor a dish, and signal refinement at the same time. Behind the stone defenses, these cultivated spaces show a quieter kind of knowledge rooted in care, memory, and daily need. Some castles had fish ponds to supply food on fasting days. Medieval Christian calendars shaped what people ate, and fish became especially important when meat was restricted. A castle with fish ponds could keep a reliable supply close at hand. These ponds were managed resources, not ornamental accidents. They might hold carp, pike, eels, or other freshwater species depending on region and availability. Maintaining them required control of water flow, stocking, harvesting, and protection from theft. The result was a living pantry. On days when religious practice limited the table, the household could still serve food appropriate to rank. This mattered for hospitality as much as hunger. A noble family needed to feed guests properly, even when rules changed what could be served. Fish ponds also show how castles extended their organization into the surrounding land. Food did not simply appear in the kitchen. It was planned through fields, stores, animals, waterways, and ponds. A dish on the table might begin months earlier in a carefully managed pool. Medieval castles were often brightly painted rather than bare grey stone. The familiar grey ruin can mislead us. Many castles in their active lives were not the weathered shells we see today. Walls might be lime-washed, plastered, or painted. Interior rooms could glow with color, pattern, and heraldic display. Doorways, Beams, shields, ceilings, and chapels might carry pigments that have mostly faded or been stripped away by time. Color mattered because it communicated wealth and identity. A painted surface could make a room warmer, clearer, and more impressive to visitors. On the outside, limewash could protect masonry while giving a fortress a striking presence in the landscape. We often inherit the castle after centuries of rain, damage, neglect, and romantic ruin. The medieval eye may have seen something far more vivid. This changes the mood of the past. The castle was not only rough stone and shadow, it could be bright, intentional, and visually alive, closer to a statement of controlled spectacle than a bare monument. Heraldic banners helped identify families, allies, and military claims. In a world where many people could not read, symbols carried enormous force. Heraldry turned identity into color and shape. A banner above a tower, a shield in a hall, or a painted device near a gate could tell observers who ruled, who was allied, and what claim was being asserted. These designs were not random decoration. They followed recognized patterns that allowed noble families to be identified across battlefields, seals, documents, and buildings. Inside a castle, heraldic displays strengthened memory. It reminded visitors of marriages, inherited rights, victories, and loyalties. During conflict, it could help distinguish friend from enemy when armor and distance made faces useless. A castle draped or marked with heraldry became a public argument about legitimacy. It said, in effect, this place belongs to this line, under this protection, with this history behind it. The cloth might move in the wind, but the message was meant to feel permanent. Castle walls could carry painted decoration that has mostly vanished. It is easy to think of stone walls as plain, but many medieval interiors once held scenes, patterns, and colors. Painted decoration could frame windows, imitate expensive textiles, show religious imagery, or display family symbols. Some designs were made directly on plaster, which means they were vulnerable to damp, fire, rebuilding, and neglect. Centuries later, only fragments may remain under later layers or in sheltered corners. Those scraps are precious because they reveal how differently a room once felt. A chamber now empty may have been full of visual meaning. A wall now pale may have carried saints, vines, shields, stars, or geometric patterns. Paint helped shape mood and status. It could make a room more sacred, more noble, or more theatrical. The loss is enormous, but the surviving hints are powerful. They remind us that castles were not just engineered, they were experienced through color, symbol, and carefully made surfaces that time has almost erased. The whitewashing of towers could make castles shine from far away. A pale tower catching sunlight could be seen across a long distance, and that visibility was part of its effect. Whitewash was made from lime, and it could protect surfaces while changing how a building appeared. A fortress coated in bright limewash might stand out against hills, woodland, or town roofs with startling clarity. It did not simply occupy the landscape, it announced itself. This mattered in a world where power depended on being recognized. Travelers approaching from a road might see the castle long before reaching it. Local people working in fields might look up and be reminded of the authority above them. The effect could be practical as well as symbolic, because limewash helped seal and preserve masonry, yet its visual power is what lingers in the imagination. The castles we see today are often darkened by age. Some medieval viewers may have known them as bright landmarks, almost blazing against the sky. Castles were colder, darker, and noisier than fairy tales suggest. Life inside stone walls could be physically demanding. Thick masonry held chill, especially in damp weather. Small windows limited light in many rooms. Candles, lamps, fires, and daylight through narrow openings had to do the work that modern lighting now makes effortless. Sound traveled in strange ways through courtyards, halls, stairs, and service spaces. Hooves struck stone, doors creaked, servants called out, dogs barked, metal rang from workshops, wind found gaps around shutters. Privacy was limited, and comfort depended on rank, season, and access to heat. The wealthy could improve their rooms with textiles, fires, and better furnishings. but the building itself remained challenging. This reality does not make castles less fascinating. It makes them more human. The romance of a tower is one thing when seen from outside. Living inside it through a wet winter morning was another matter. Medieval people inhabited grandeur with cold hands, smoky clothes, and constant noise around them. The sound of construction could continue for decades around great castles. A major castle was not always finished in one clean effort. Building could continue across reigns, fortunes, wars, and changing plans. The site might echo with chisels, hammers, carts, pulleys, shouted instructions, and animals hauling loads year after year. One generation could begin a wall that another completed. A lord might add a tower to impress rivals. A later owner might strengthen a gate, rebuild a hall, or repair damage after conflict. The result was a structure that grew through time, rather than appearing all at once. People living nearby may have experienced the castle as a constant project. Dust, scaffolding, temporary workshops, and piles of stone could become part of the landscape. This long process helps explain why many castles are architecturally uneven. Different sections belong to different ambitions. A fortress could carry the fingerprints of changing taste, new fears, and old problems. Its construction history is not a footnote. It is part of the story written into every wall. Master masons carried specialized knowledge across kingdoms and frontiers. The people who designed and supervised great stonework possessed expertise that was both practical and rare. A master mason had to understand geometry, materials, foundations, lifting methods, vaulting, drainage, and the behavior of stone under pressure. He also had to organize teams and solve problems on a working site. Such knowledge could travel. Skilled builders moved from one project to another, sometimes carrying ideas across regions where rulers, bishops, and nobles competed through architecture. A tower form, window detail, or construction method might spread because a trained craftsperson had seen it succeed elsewhere. This movement made castles part of the wider technical world. They were not isolated inventions. They belonged to networks of labor, apprenticeship, and experience. The master mason's name was often less celebrated than the lord who paid the bill. But without his judgment, ambition could crack and fail. Behind every lasting wall stood minds that knew how to persuade stone to bear weight. Many castle workers were local people paid for skilled labor. The building of a fortress drew in communities around it. Some workers were specialists, but many came from the surrounding area. They quarried stone, dug ditches, carried water, burned lime, hauled timber, shaped materials, drove carts, and supplied food. Skilled local laborers might earn wages for carpentry, masonry assistance, roofing, or metalwork. This meant a castle was not only imposed on the landscape, it also became an economic event within it. People could resent forced demands, but paid work could bring money and opportunity. Markets might grow near the site because workers needed bread, ale, tools, and shelter. The project changed daily rhythms. Fields, roads, and quarries became connected to the rising walls. This labor history is often invisible once the building is complete. Tourists see towers. The medieval countryside saw effort. Every stone lifted into place carried human exhaustion, negotiation, and skill. A castle was not created by one noble will. It was built by many hands. Some castles reused Roman stone from ruins nearby. Medieval builders were often practical recyclers. When old Roman walls, forts, towns, or monuments stood nearby, their stone could become a tempting supply. Shaped blocks were valuable because quarrying and dressing new material required time and money. Reuse could also carry symbolic meaning. Building with ancient stone connected a new lord to the authority of a vanished empire, whether intentionally or through the sheer presence of the material. A Roman block placed in a medieval wall might have already witnessed centuries before being lifted again. This gives some castles a layered identity. Their stones may be older than the structures they form. A visitor looking at a wall might be seeing fragments of two worlds at once. Practical need, memory, conquest, and continuity all meet in reused masonry. The result is quietly astonishing. Medieval power sometimes built itself out of imperial leftovers, taking the bones of one age and fitting them into the ambitions of another. Castle design changed quickly as weapons and tactics evolved. A castle was never a fixed idea. It changed because enemies changed. When attackers improved mining, builders reconsidered tower shapes and foundations. When missile weapons developed, openings and wall walks adapted. When siege engines became larger, walls and defensive layers had to answer. Experience mattered too. A failed defense could teach lessons that spread through builders, soldiers, and rulers. This produced an architectural arms race over centuries. Designs that once seemed formidable could become outdated when new tactics appeared. Some castles were modified repeatedly, gaining extra towers, thicker entrances, deeper ditches, or altered residential spaces. Others became awkward mixtures of older and newer thinking. This constant adjustment is one reason castles are so rewarding to study. They are records of problem solving under pressure. Every feature asks a question about danger. Every alteration suggests that someone, somewhere, had learned a hard lesson. The castle is not just a building, it is a conversation between fear and invention. Gunpowder slowly made high medieval walls dangerously outdated. The arrival of effective cannon did not make castles useless overnight, but it changed the rules. Tall vertical walls had been designed to resist ladders, arrows, and many earlier siege methods. Against artillery, height could become a weakness. A high wall presented a clear target, and repeated cannon fire could crack masonry in ways older weapons struggled to achieve. Defenders began to need lower, thicker, and more angled forms that could absorb or deflect impact. This transition took time because cannon technology, cost, and availability developed unevenly. Some older castles were adapted with gun ports, earthworks, or reinforced sections. Others became less useful as serious military defenses. The shift is dramatic because it marks a change in the meaning of strength. For centuries, castles had reached upward to dominate. Gunpowder forced fortification to think outward and downward. The age of the towering wall did not vanish in a single moment. It slowly learned that grandeur could be dangerous. Early cannons turned castle architecture toward lower and thicker defenses. Once artillery became a serious threat, builders had to rethink the shape of protection. Stone alone was not always enough, especially when hit repeatedly by heavy shot. Earth could absorb impact better, so later defenses often combined masonry with banks, platforms, and broader bases. Walls became lower to reduce target size. Corners and projections changed so defenders could mount guns and cover approaches with fire. The old castle's skyline, with soaring walls and proud towers, began to give way to squat strength. This was not a loss of intelligence, it was adaptation. Military architecture followed the physics of the weapon aimed at it. Early gun defenses could look less romantic, but they were built from hard experience. The sound of cannon changed what safety meant. A fortress now had to survive shock, vibration, and concentrated damage from a distance. In response, the architecture grew heavier, flatter, and more mathematical. Power settled closer to the ground. Some castles became comfortable palaces after their military purpose faded. When a fortress was no longer needed as a frontline defense, its owners could begin to soften it. Drafty chambers might be improved. Larger windows could be inserted where security mattered less. Gardens, decorated rooms, private apartments, and ceremonial spaces could take priority over hard military function. This transformation did not erase the castle's prestige. In fact, the old walls could make the residents seem even more impressive because they carried the memory of ancestral power. A palace inside a former fortress allowed a family to enjoy comfort while still living within a symbol of authority. The change also reflected broader shifts in politics. Centralized states, new weapons, and changing noble lifestyles all affected how elite homes were used. Some castles became showpieces rather than strategic necessities. Others retained mixed roles for a long time. The story is not one of simple decline. It is one of reinvention. Stone built for danger found new life as a setting for status. Ruined castles often survived because their stones were too difficult to remove. Abandoned buildings were frequently treated as convenient quarries. If dressed stone could be carried away easily, it might be reused in houses, barns, walls, churches, or roads. Yet some castle ruins survived because dismantling them was simply too hard. Massive walls, high locations, strong mortar, awkward access, and sheer weight discouraged total removal. A tower might remain not because people were preserving history, but because taking it apart was more trouble than it was worth. This accidental survival shaped the landscapes we inherit. The romantic ruin may owe its existence to practical inconvenience. Over time, ivy, weather, local stories, and changing tastes transformed these leftovers into cherished monuments. But their first survival could be stubbornly material. Stone resisted not through military strength, but through labor cost. The ruin endured because human effort had limits. In this way, the same solidity that once frustrated attackers later frustrated scavengers, allowing fragments of medieval life to remain standing. Local communities sometimes quarried abandoned castles for building material. When a castle lost its purpose, nearby people might see not history, but usable stone. Cut blocks, timber, lead, tiles, iron fittings, and carved pieces could all be valuable. A ruined fortress became a storehouse for those building homes, farm structures, boundary walls, or local projects. This reuse was not always vandalism in the modern sense. For communities with limited resources, it was practical. The castle had once drawn labor and materials into itself. Later, it could release them back into the landscape. That means pieces of vanished fortresses may survive in ordinary buildings nearby, hidden in cottage walls or farmyards. The process also changed how ruins looked. Gateways disappeared, towers were lowered, and halls became outlines. What remains today may be only the portion that proved too difficult, too symbolic, or too protected to remove. This afterlife is fascinating because it shows medieval architecture continuing to serve people long after its original power had faded. Romantic artists later reshaped how people imagined medieval castles. Centuries after many castles lost military importance, artists and writers began to see ruins as emotional landscapes. Broken towers, empty windows, and ivy-covered walls became symbols of mystery, memory, and lost grandeur. Painters framed castles under dramatic skies. Poets and novelists filled them with secrets, longing, and imagined chivalry. This romantic vision changed public taste. A ruin no longer had to be merely a damaged building. It could become beautiful because it was incomplete. The medieval past was reimagined through feeling as much as evidence. This mattered because it influenced restoration, tourism, and even the castles people built later in revival styles. The image of the lonely fortress on a hill owes a great deal to this later imagination. It can be enchanting, but it can also hide the harsher realities of power, labor, and politics. Romantic artists did not create castles, but they profoundly shaped how later generations learned to dream about them. Many famous castles were restored heavily in the 19th century. Some castles that look perfectly medieval today owe much of their appearance to later restoration. In the 19th century, architects, antiquarians, nobles, and governments often repaired or rebuilt castles according to their own ideas of the Middle Ages. Sometimes they preserved carefully. Sometimes they corrected, completed, or reinvented what they believed the past should have looked like. Missing towers could be rebuilt, interiors could be refurnished, walls could be stabilized or altered for visitors. This work saved many sites from further decay, but it also complicates what we see. A room may contain medieval fabric, later imagination, and modern conservation all at once. The result can be beautiful and historically layered, but not always straightforward. These restorations reveal as much about the 19th century as about the medieval period. They show an age fascinated by ancestry, nationhood, romance, and craftsmanship. When we walk through a restored castle, we may be walking through two dreams of the past at once. Castle ruins can hide more history underground than above it. What survives in the open air is only part of the story. Beneath grass, rubble, courtyards, and collapsed walls may lie foundations, drains, post holes, floors, paths, workshops, rubbish pits, and buried objects. Archaeology can reveal buildings that no longer stand, routes people once walked, and areas where daily work took place. A low mound might mark a vanished tower. A line of stones might show where a service range stood. Layers of ash, bone, pottery, and metal can tell a richer story than a surviving wall. This hidden record matters because ruins are often incomplete in misleading ways. The grand parts may remain while ordinary spaces disappear. Underground evidence restores some of that lost balance. It helps us understand where people cooked, repaired tools, kept animals, dumped waste, and moved through the site. A ruin is not empty. It is a sealed archive, and much of its memory may still be waiting underfoot. Archaeologists read castle landscapes through ditches, foundations, and forgotten paths. A castle is more than the stone that still stands. Its wider landscape can preserve clues that are easy to miss. A shallow depression may be an old ditch. A raised bank may mark a boundary. A faint track might show how carts once approached a service entrance. Foundations can reveal demolished buildings, while changes in soil can show where water once gathered, or where timber structures stood. Archaeologists study these traces to reconstruct movement and purpose. They ask how people entered, where they worked, what areas were controlled, and how the castle related to fields, roads, villages, and water. This kind of reading turns the ground into a document. The most dramatic tower may be less informative than a barely visible earthwork. Forgotten paths are especially powerful because they preserve behavior. They show where feet, wheels, and animals repeatedly moved. In that sense, a castle landscape can still remember the habits of people whose names are gone. Charcoal traces can reveal where castle kitchens once burned hot. Fire leaves evidence long after flames disappear. In archaeological layers, charcoal, ash, burnt clay, and heat-reddened surfaces can reveal where cooking, baking, or industrial work took place. A castle kitchen might vanish above ground, yet its heat can remain written into the soil. Charcoal fragments can even help identify the kinds of wood used for fuel, offering clues about local woodland management and supply. Concentrations of burnt material may show where hearths stood, where ovens operated, or where waste was dumped after fires were cleaned. This transforms tiny black fragments into historical witnesses. They speak of labor, meals, smoke, and the repeated work of feeding a household. A grand hall may get more attention, but the kitchen fire sustained the people who filled it. Charcoal is humble evidence, yet it can bring us close to lived experience. It is the residue of warmth, hunger, skill, and routine, surviving in darkness after the voices have gone. Animal bones can show what castle households ate during ordinary days. Rubbish can be astonishingly informative. Bones discarded after meals can reveal which animals were eaten, how they were butchered, and sometimes who received better cuts. Cattle, sheep, pigs, deer, birds, and fish all leave different traces. Cut marks show knives at work. Burn patterns suggest cooking methods. The age of animals at death can hint at farming choices and status. A noble household might consume more venison or select cuts than poorer communities nearby, while servants and workers may have eaten simpler portions. Fish bones can reflect religious fasting practices or trade connections if species came from distant waters. These remains correct the grandness of castle stories. They show the menu behind the ceremony. They remind us that power had a diet. Every feast eventually became waste, and every waste pit became an archive. Through bones, archaeologists can reconstruct not just what people ate, but how rank, season, religion, and supply shaped the table. Pottery fragments can reveal trade connections across surprising distances. A broken sherd may seem worthless, yet it can carry a map inside it. Pottery has distinctive fabrics, glazes, shapes, and firing methods that can identify where it was made. When fragments from distant regions appear at a castle, they show that goods, tastes, and connections traveled farther than the eye might expect. Imported jugs, fine tableware, storage vessels, or cooking pots can reveal wealth and contact. Even ordinary ceramics help date layers and reconstruct daily habits. A castle household did not exist in isolation. It consumed objects shaped by markets, roads, rivers, ports, and craftspeople beyond the walls. Pottery also breaks often, which makes it abundant evidence. A shattered vessel thrown away after use can survive when documents do not. Each fragment is a small testimony to movement. It may have carried wine, oil, grain, or simply water. In its clay, the castle's wider world quietly remains. Written records sometimes name the workers who built great fortresses. Medieval documents can occasionally bring individual laborers out of the crowd. Account rolls, payment lists, contracts, and administrative notes may name masons, carpenters, smiths, carters, diggers, or overseers. These records can reveal wages, materials, work schedules, and the immense organization behind construction. A castle that seems like the vision of a king or lord becomes, through such documents, a coordinated human enterprise. Names matter because they restore presence. Instead of anonymous hands, we glimpse people who cut stone, lifted timber, burned lime, and solved daily problems on site. Some may have worked for weeks. Others may have followed building projects across regions. The records are often incomplete, but even a brief entry can be moving. A person paid for a day's labor helped create a wall that might last centuries. The fortress remembers them indirectly through its survival. The document remembers them more plainly, in ink that turns labor into history. Some castles were never attacked, despite looking ready for war. A fortress did not need to experience a siege to have served its purpose. Sometimes its mere presence discouraged conflict. A strong wall, a controlled gate, and a visible garrison could persuade rivals to choose another target or settle disputes through negotiation. This is an important point because dramatic history often favors the places where violence occurred. Yet prevention is harder to see. A castle might spend its active life shaping behavior without ever being tested in battle. It could secure taxes, protect stores, house officials, and remind the region that authority was prepared. Peace around such a site was not necessarily proof that it was useless. It may have been proof that it worked. Readiness has a history too. The arrows never loosed, the siege never begun, and the rebellion never attempted all belong to the story. A castle could win by making attack seem foolish before anyone raised a ladder. Others changed hands repeatedly without being destroyed completely. A castle could pass from one lord to another many times and still remain standing. Capture did not always mean ruin. A new owner often wanted the fortress intact because its value lay in continued use. Damaging it too badly would waste the prize. This meant that castles could accumulate layers of occupation, repair, adaptation, and memory. A hall built by one family might be used by its enemy. A tower damaged in one conflict might be patched by the next regime. A chapel might preserve prayers from people who would not have recognized each other as allies. Ownership could change through siege, inheritance, marriage, treaty, royal command, or political reversal. The stones stayed while loyalties shifted around them. That continuity is one of the haunting things about castles. They outlived many of the causes fought over them. A fortress could watch banners change, names change, and laws change while remaining useful to whoever held the keys. A castle's shadow could reshape the economy around it. The presence of a castle altered more than military security. It created demand. Workers needed food, drink, tools, cloth, timber, candles, leather, ironwork, and transport. Officials needed clerks. Horses needed fodder, guests brought retinues. Markets could develop because the household consumed so much. Local farmers might find buyers, but they might also face dues and obligations. Craftspeople could benefit from repair work and supply contracts. Roads might improve because the castle required movement. Inns or informal lodging might appear near busy routes. In some places, the fortress helped draw a settlement into its orbit. The economy around it was not always free or fair, but it was active. It concentrated resources, and resources attracted people. A castle could therefore change what nearby communities produced, where they sold, and whom they answered to. Its shadow was not only cast by sunlight, it was cast through coin, labor, law, and the daily pull of a large household. Medieval castles were not isolated monuments, but living centers of control. A castle connected to the world around it through people, obligations, roads, rents, courts, farms, and messages. It could store grain, host officials, receive petitions, enforce rights, and organize defense. The Lord might not always be present, but the institution remained active through stewards, guards, servants, and records. Nearby communities experienced the castle not as scenery, but as authority. It could protect them in moments of danger and burden them through dues. It could offer work and demand obedience. Its influence spread into fields, mills, churches, markets, and legal disputes. This is why a castle cannot be fully understood as a lone tower on a hill. It was part of the system. The walls enclosed space, but the power reached outward. To medieval people, the castle was often where decisions became real. It was where command gained a door, a seal, a storehouse, and armed backing. It was the center of a working order. Every ruined tower is the remains of a vanished human system. When we look at a broken tower, it is tempting to see only stone and sky. Yet what has vanished is far larger than the masonry. The tower once belonged to a network of builders, guards, servants, tenants, animals, stores, documents, loyalties, fears, and ambitions. It required income from land, skilled repair, legal authority, fuel, food, and people willing or compelled to keep it functioning. Its rooms held voices and routines. Its stairs felt the feet of messengers, workers, prisoners, guests, and watchmen. Its meaning changed as generations passed through it. Now the roof may be gone, and birds may nest where orders were once given. Still, the ruin is not empty. It is the visible remnant of an entire way of organizing life. That is the deepest wonder of castles. They were never just buildings. They were systems of power made habitable, and every surviving fragment is a doorway into the world that sustained them. And so we come to the end of our journey through the world of medieval castles. We have wandered through gates built to intimidate, climbed towers shaped by strategy, and looked beneath stone floors into wells, kitchens, chambers, and hidden passages. We have seen how castles were not just lonely monuments on distant hills, but living centers of power, work, faith, fear, and survival. They watched roads and rivers, they guarded borders, they gathered towns beneath their walls. Some shone with paint and banners, some echoed with hammers for decades. Some were never attacked at all, because their very presence was enough to make violence pause. And now only fragments remain in many places. A broken arch, a stairway that climbs into open air, a wall warmed by evening light. But even in ruin, these places still seem to hold their breath. They remind us that history is not only found in kings and battles, but in footsteps, smoke, tools, meals, prayers, and the patient work of human hands. If you enjoyed this sleepy journey through the medieval world, you are warmly invited to like, subscribe, or leave a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. And if you happen to still be awake, there should be another calm history video waiting on the screen for you now. But for this moment, there is nothing more you need to follow. Let the towers fade into the distance. Let the old gates close softly behind you. Let your shoulders loosen, and let your breathing become slow and easy. The stones can keep their secrets for another night. The road can wait until morning. For now, allow your thoughts to settle like dust in a quiet hall after the candles have gone out. Sleep well, and good night.